name is Laura Valentine. I'm the chair of the jail ad hoc committee doing this jail project. Up here I also have the rest of the jail ad hoc committee behind me. Still too quiet? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Over on my side, we have our finance department and jail staff, sheriff's department, and also our jail discharge planner and criminal justice coordinator. Thank you. So first we're going to run through a presentation that we've put together, and after that we'll take questions and comments, and hopefully we can address everything that way. All right.
Can you be a little louder?
Is this better? I think I just need to be closer. Okay, so, all right. So we're going to first talk about what the problems are with our current jail. Currently, we've divided it into 5 categories. It's outdated and it's unsafe configuration. We don't have enough capacity for the inmates that we're currently responsible for. Because of that, we are paying out-of-county housing costs for those inmates. Our insurance costs are rising because of some situations we've had in the jail, which we'll come to soon. And we don't have enough programming space to be able to address some of the needs that we have with our inmates. So outdated, unsafe configuration. On the left, this is a linear style jail. This is a picture of our jail. So you can see, you look down the hallway and you can't see into any of the cells. You can't see any of the inmates. So you physically have to walk down the hall and open each door to get eyes on each person. A pod style jail, which is a more modern style of jail, is what you can see on the right. And this is when you have visibility of everyone in a cell block at the same time. So this is a much safer for both the inmates and for the jail staff. So lack of capacity, we have a 132-bed jail with a design operating capacity of 112 beds. In 2020, we averaged a 206-person inmate population. So that meant that the excess people were being sent to neighboring counties, usually Waupaca or Adams County, where they were housed there. We pay $35 a day per bed per person, and those contracts will be coming up in 2022, so those amounts are going to be increasing. So our out-of-county housing, in Adams County in 2020, we have paid $260,000. In Waupaca County, it was $985,000 for a total of $1.245 million in out-of-county housing costs. It's actually slightly lower this year because of COVID. 2019 was $1.3 million. And we're projecting for 2021, again, $1.3 million. On top of that, we also have to transport these inmates back and forth for court dates and for admission and booking. So what happens is an inmate will come into Wood County, they'll be processed through our jail, stay here for a day or so, then go to a neighboring county, and when they're ready for court dates, they need to be brought back for court, taken back again, and then when they're ready for release, they come back to Wood County and are released out of our jail. So even if the inmates are not housed in Wood County, they're still released in Wood County. So we're releasing the same number of inmates regardless of where they're being housed. In Wood County, since 2016, we've had 5 major insurance claims. These were suicides that happened in our jail. And this is mostly because we just don't have visibility into the cells and couldn't get to the inmates soon enough. Because of that, our premium is up to $417,000 annually. In 2021, it's up from $327,000. So we've gone up $90,000 in 1 year just because of our current situation with our lack of safety. And this also shows, since 2016, all of the insurance claim payouts. In the red, this is the payouts that the Sheriff's Department were responsible for. I'm sorry, in the gray, it was the Sheriff's Department. In the red is the total county, so you can see that the Sheriff's Department is responsible for the majority of all of the insurance claims for the county. Now I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Salewski, our jail discharge planner, and she's going to talk about our programming situation.
Thank you. I'll try to speak loud enough. So my name, again, is Sarah Salewski, and I'm the discharge planner with the jail, helping to connect people to important programs and services before they leave. I think it's important to preface that I started this role after COVID, so my only known normal of the jail is how it's currently functioning. And at roughly half the population here in Wisconsin Rapids, I've already experienced space limitations for programming and meetings with my clients. In our jail, we have one library or group space, which is shown in this picture. And when speaking to programming, the ideal number of people in a class is about 5 to 8 with a maximum of 10 people. So when we think about a number of classes in a day, it's easy to think about a normal 8-hour day. But however, after working around good, normally scheduled time, that leaves us around 4 hours of good available time in the jail that's unscheduled that we could possibly use for programming. But then we have to take into consideration the COs needing to transport people from cell blocks to the library and any other unscheduled operations and unforeseen circumstances. And it's likely in a perfect case scenario that this 4 hours quickly dwindles down to 3 45-minute classes each day during the work week. So I'm trying to kind of break down this graph and not bore you too much. So if you take those 3 classes a day with a maximum of 10 people in the class, that is about 30 people a day, times 5 days a week, it would get us to about 150 people. And that might sound like a really nice number, except that that roughly equals 1 45-minute class a week per person in our current facility. And so I also chose to calculate based on a 5-day work week because a lot of those programs and services are administered by other organizations and nonprofits who have a Monday through Friday normal work week. Now that we've dwindled that down to 45 minutes a week per person for a population of 150, we actually likely have to dwindle it down even more because we didn't take into consideration competing demands for that meeting space in the jail. So in addition to the jail library, we have 2 small conference rooms that hold 2 people in each, and they're back to back. And availability of these rooms is really inconsistent due to competing demands of probation and parole, attorneys, public defenders, mental health, and myself with discharge planning. It can also be used for transport, so if we're moving people to different facilities and we need to hold somebody, or if there's isolated situations going on in the jail, we need to move somebody in there for safety. If those 2 rooms are full, we flow over to the library. So again, even at half the population of Wisconsin Rapids, I've experienced so many wait times for these rooms, and I experienced them today. Prior to COVID, jail staff have stated that there were actually lines of probation officers and attorneys that would line up in the jail just to get a free room. And sometimes our COs would take the probation officer or the attorney to meet with the person in the hallway outside of the jail just to go over their paperwork. And they fully expect this to happen again as the jail reopens. It's suggested that most of a person's time in jail should be spent in programs and services to better equip them for re-entry into the community. So 45 minutes a week is just not enough to address individuals' needs, and many programs require more than 45 minutes a week for just one program. And again, that 45 minutes is based on that perfect scheduling scenario, and in a jail setting, it's a moving target. More programming would certainly allow for more programming spaces, would allow for more classes, and then for them to run simultaneously, increasing the amount available each week and the dedicated availability of space. Currently in our facility, we have been able to offer some phone call services as in-person programming is pretty limited because of COVID. Partners include Midstate for the GED program, Three Bridges Recovery, peer mentor support, Windows to Work and employment programming, and then also faith-based services that is based on interest and again, the availability of phones. Prior to COVID, we also had AA and NA as well as some domestic violence support groups. However, I'm told it was not unusual for those classes to get canceled because of competing demands again for space and those unforeseen events. It's important to note that those who are housed in Wapaka and Adams, like Laura was mentioning before, do not receive any programming services because they're not eligible to receive other county services, or communication via phone or video conference is really limited or doesn't exist. As a new employee tasked with linking people to programs and services, I spend a lot of time talking to community organizations, and in conversations, many people are interested in working with our incarcerated population because they're really underserved and generally really hard to reach. This is just a list of partners who are interested in providing programming that wasn't on that current slide. Getting programming will be the easy part, however, we can't really provide it now due to space and other limitations. Evidence has shown that some of the best programming to provide is psychoeducation services that target specific assessed needs that address the linkages between dysfunctional thought processes and harmful behavior, and help that individual develop stronger skills and tools to cope and thrive in our community. One evidence-based model called Getting It Right, a reentry program, requires at least a minimum of 2 hours per session for 3 to 5 days a week. With one 45-minute class capacity, we just cannot do this at this time. For those that complete this program, they are 2 times less likely to engage in criminality behavior, 4 times less likely to engage in substance use, and had 10 times greater odds of having employment and housing stability than non-completers of the program. We actually own these materials, but we are not able to implement them because we don't have the space availability. In 2019, Three Bridges Recovery implemented a Smart Recovery program for those with substance use disorders in our jail. And for those who successfully completed, all have remained in contact with Three Bridges Recovery, all have remained in recovery, and none of them have been back. For these programs are significant, as a recent jail study survey that I've been working on has identified that 65% of the people who responded reported using drugs or alcohol on a regular basis prior to coming to jail. 46% have wanted treatment for drug or alcohol but have unable to find or get treatment. 45% have no source of income, and 41% state that if they were to leave jail today, they would not have a permanent address or place to stay. And overall, 68% of them reported they were homeless while in Wood County at some point in time. So why in the jail and not why after they leave? Simply put, their basic needs, food, water, warmth, and rest, are met while they are with us. For many without employment and housing, the moment they leave our doors, they go into this constant state of survival mode. They're not thriving. So when you think about your basic needs not being met, you're not able to start focusing on other needs such as treatment and psychological needs, employment, parenting, you name it. There's no time to focus on bettering yourself. These opportunities are not easily accessible once you leave and can't be reached due to a lack of having an address, having a phone number, having transportation, and entering that state of crisis and survival mode. Jail can certainly be more than accountability, and it can be rehabilitative for some who never had these skills. Or for some who never had these skills to rehabilitate in the first place, it can be a place to learn and build these skills for the first time because they're finally being able to have the opportunity to do so. Some statistics, and hand it over, but statistics show that incarceration-based programs are cost-effective. And psychoeducation programs have return on investment of $24.72 for every dollar spent. For education, that's about $19.62 for every dollar spent. And for employment programs, it's $13.21 for every dollar spent. The reports also suggest that addressing these needs while people are in jail through programming can reduce recidivism, or the likelihood of someone returning, by 30 to 40%. That is the ultimate goal. So while sometimes it's hard to calculate all the moving parts of the fiscal ROI, or return on investment, it's easy for me to understand the personal ROI, the return on the individual. So looking at the future, if we only considered one service program under the psychoeducational services, our space and availability limitations prevent us from supporting this program. And that's just one program out of the many that are available and that people want to provide. We know that people have many needs while they are with us, and more space would allow us to address these needs. We know that programming works, but we just don't have a facility that supports it. And we can't expect to reduce recidivism rates and actually help people if we don't provide programming in these support services. So to summarize this very important part, current jail programming is really limited to the lack of the available space, inconsistency of the availability of space due to those competing demands between myself, mental health, probation officers, attorneys, public defenders, transport needs, and then current space is really labor intensive. So for correction staff to be able to be responsible to take them from the cell block and bring them to the library and back takes a lot of time, and it dwindles down to that 45 minutes really, really quickly. So program interventions are going to be a really essential component to reduce recidivism and increase the well-being of our community. Who's next? Thank you.
So this is our proposed new design for a jail. We're proposing a 225-bed jail with the ability to double up to 85% of bunks to reach a maximum capacity of 300 beds. It will include a new sheriff's department, and also includes the demo of the existing jail structure and/or shelling out the existing jail structure, leaving it available for future building projects if that's something that we decide to do. It does not require any residential land acquisition, which was very important for us, and it does require the vacation or acquisition of Avon Street, which is the street that right between both county properties currently. So this is an aerial view of what it would look like. In the gray is the current courthouse and jail complex. The yellow would be the new the yellow is the parking structure. The green would be the new sheriff's department. And then this beige multicolored facility would be the jail structure itself. The green line you see on the bottom of the screen would be a walkway connecting the jail directly to the courts. And we'll just go through a few more photos, different vantage points, so you can kind of get a picture of what it would look like. You can see Avon Street is right here. So we would be straddling right on top of Avon Street. The positive thing is that all of the utilities in Avon Street serve the courthouse complex currently, so they don't serve residential properties. Just another vantage point, you can see this kind of awkwardly shaped building on the bottom here in gray. That's the current jail. And this is if we were to demolish the jail and build a new structure, this is what it could maybe look like, but this is not part of the current plan. The current plan would just be to demo the jail. It's something we could use for parking or a green space in the meantime. This is a 3D rendering. It's not pretty, but hopefully it can give you kind of a spatial picture. This is Market Street that we're looking at right here. In the gray is the current courthouse, and the beige is the proposed jail. We've got a couple more pictures of it. This kind of small block in the front, this would be the Sally Port. This is where ambulances and inmates would come in and out of. And now we're looking, this is us looking on 5th Street. So this is the backside of the jail, the beige being the jail again, and you can see the current jail far off on the right. And again, if we were to build a new building where the current jail sits, this is what it could maybe look like. This is the Eau Claire County Jail. It's not our jail, obviously, but what we'd like to point out here, the Eau Claire County Jail is 10 years old. It was built by the same It was designed by the same architect as who we are currently working with. So you can see it doesn't have to look like a jail. This looks like an office building, or we could make it look like a school, a library, an office building, but we can make the facade look however we like. It doesn't need to look like your very stereotypical jail complex. So our proposed new design has a construction cost of $46,850,000. A non-construction cost, this is the permits, design of $9,370,000 for a total cost of $56,220,000. This is if we bid for spring of 2022. I'm going to hand it over to Captain Ted Ashbeck now. He's going to talk a little bit about how much it costs to operate our jail.
Thank you. And I'll try not to drop the microphone. Okay, the slide that you're looking at now is a preparation of when we looked at the operating costs for the current jail and what a new 2-pod facility would look like to operate at the cost there. We had looked through different, projects of 3-pod or 2-pod, and the 2-pod actually worked better because it reduced the size, the footprint of the facility, which then made it fit on the current property owned by Wood County. So as you can see on this slide here, our current operating cost is about $4.1 million. Next over, you'll see the slide where it shows the 2-pod staffing. This staffing shows where these individuals would be located inside the facility, and it covers all those crews. As we look down, you'll see the addition of crew 8. It would be 8 on days, 8 on nights. Our current staff is 30. What it would be. Our current staff is 22, which then brings it down to new officers would be 8 new officers. And as you can see down at the bottom, it kind of goes through 8 new officers at the pay rate and benefits and a total cost of $592,000. And then when we add the maintenance staff person to maintain the facility, even though it'd be new, we'd still want somebody there to help keep it new and keep it working. And that would come up to a total cost of $666,000, which for us, that would be about a $585,000 less than our operating currently, bringing it down to $3,500,000. In that same one, we'd be looking at our staff costs. I know on one of the slides later on does explain a little bit more. believe now we're up to Ed.
Hi, my name is Ed Newton. I'm the Finance Director for the county. And I believe online we might have Justin Fisher. Justin Fisher, he's with Richard Baird and Company. He's the Director of Public Financing, and he is one who helped put together the slide. We worked with Justin and the Baird Company. They've helped us before on all our construction projects and our borrowing, and they're very familiar with Wood County. So I think I'm going to have Justin talk on this slide first, and then I'll jump in. Justin? She's going to unmute you.
Okay. I'll start over. So over the last 8 months, we've evaluated multiple different strategies, options, and the strategic plan that was selected achieves a low tax impact. It's the lowest overall cost option, includes local banks in the process to show support, and provides flexibility to issue long-term debt when ready and timing is optimal. So what we did is we factored in the existing debt for the county currently, and then factored in not only the potential jail project here, but also the annual capital needs that the county borrows for on an annual basis. So we've taken a look at everything in combination, as well as future potential borrowings, because the county is going to need to continue to fund, needed capital projects to continue to improve the county and so forth. With all this being said, the strategic goal here was to try to keep the maximum tax impact to 30 cents in 2022 and an additional 5 cents by 2024. So a total tax impact of 35 cents. Then at the same time in 2027, we're strategically having the tax rate drop by on average about 5 cents per year to account for hypothetical future borrowings starting in 2026 thereafter. So, this plan not only looks at now, but it also factors in what potentially could happen into the future.
Thank you, Justin. On this slide, this kind of looks at what our borrowing capacity is. Even after we borrow this debt, we would still have remaining capacity of about $208 million. That's quite, so we're far below of what we can actually borrow. So, as Justin talked before, we will have an impact to the taxpayers, about 30 cents in 2022 and 5 cents in 2024, and that's per $1,000. So basically, on a $100,000 home, you're looking at about a $35 increase. And as Justin talked before, we have the mill rate will drop 5 cents per year, starting in about 2027. Also, part of the flexibility, part of this plan is to continue reducing our long-term debt as funds are available. And the ability to issue debt when ready. Also, what Justin talked about, we may be able to borrow ahead of time before we borrow on the full debt. So then once we borrow on the full debt, we'll just pay, almost like a construction loan, pay that down. And the big part is, we want to include our local banks on this borrowing process. We want to try and keep as much money here locally. So they will be involved as part of the bidding process for the borrowing. And also, once the bid process opens, we will include any local contractors who want to reach out and bid. So again, we want to try and keep things local, keep the economy strong here. And while, we're not going to be spending all the money all at once because it's a project, you're going to be paying bills down little by little. So we will be able to deposit the money into an account and earn some money off that. Estimation is probably could be right around $90,000 that we would earn in interest, and that's a very conservative. And being able to spend down the money within the 3 years is one of the rules that as long as we can keep the money spent within 3 years, it'll be a tax-free.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. So this really is an illustration to show how interest rates have dropped over the past 30 years, and we're still at the point where they're at historic lows. So from a project perspective, if you're going to borrow for a capital project, now is kind of the time to do it because it's going to be your lowest cost of funds to do so, and that's what this illustration shows. On the left side, that's 30 years ago. On the right side, that's where we are today.
Thank you. And so again, we'll kind of reiterate that the maximum mill rate will be about 35 cents per $1,000. And that's including the new jail and our continuing CIP that we do every year. And then again, it'll start decreasing after the 5 years. So based upon a $100,000 property, that would be about a maximum tax increase, about $35 on your property tax. Just a quick little stat there, Wood County, out of the 72 counties for property tax, they rank about 49th. So we are quite low on the list compared to the other counties. Thank you.
Thank you. So the local impact that we're looking at with this is that we're able to borrow locally, like Ed had mentioned. We'd like to use local construction contracts and local engineering support. We would have 9 new jobs, 8 corrections officers, and 1 maintenance staff. And we would be keeping our tax money in Wood County instead of paying for out-of-county beds. So that $1.2, $1.3 million that we're currently paying other counties would be staying within Wood County. And all of our inmates would receive programming. So instead of having the inmates that are sent to Wapaka and Adams not getting anything, we would still be able to maximize the time that we have with them to try and help their situation. So what if we do nothing? We spent a lot of time trying to talk about what if we didn't do anything? What are we looking at? So this has a 3-factor approach that we looked at. So there's an economic factor, the continued bed rental costs that we'd be looking at, and the capital cost of our jail, the operational factor, and a physical factor. So we'll go into all 3 of these in a second. So the economic factor, the increased bed rental cost, and continuing bed rental costs. So again, today we're looking at $35 a day. In the future, we're looking at conservatively $45 a day. We know that that's kind of the low end of what we can expect. Transportation and staffing time, taking these inmates back and forth for court dates and for admission and booking. Increased insurance liability and premiums. Currently, like we showed before, our insurance situation is not looking fantastic. We do risk losing coverage or limiting coverage if we continue to have claims within the jail. And we're dealing with some major maintenance and repair issues in our current building. Some of the projects are so involved that it would require vacating the jail to do the repairs, and we would have to pay out-of-county housing for the majority of the inmates while that's going on. So this is a look at some of the immediate problems, immediate concerns we have. I'm not going to go through all of them. They're not super exciting, but it's HVAC systems, lighting upgrades, fire alarm replacement, security camera upgrades, plumbing. We have cast iron plumbing in ground that is currently giving us some problems. We estimate around $5 million to repair all of these needed things. These are not anything to improve the jail, it's just to keep it running. I'm going to introduce Janelle, sorry. Janelle's going to talk a little bit about our operational factor that we're considering with our jail.
Hello everyone, thank you. My name is Janelle Hofferman. I'm the Criminal Justice Coordinator in Wood County. And so I'll be talking with you tonight about the first 2 dot points on the screen. What if we do nothing about inmate programming? So it would seem that if we do nothing, nothing will change. But what we know based on evidence is that if we're not addressing the criminogenic needs of the individuals who are in our jail, our recidivism rates will actually increase. There's a direct correlation between incarceration and recidivism rates. When an intervention that appropriately addresses criminogenic needs is not provided, each time someone is incarcerated, the likelihood that they'll end up there again increases. When I talk about criminogenic needs, those are the needs that really drive the criminal behavior. Substance use is one of those drivers. These driving factors are at the root causes of the crimes that we're seeing in our community and the crimes that are perpetuating our jail incarceration. The programming that's being proposed offers us an opportunity to assess the individuals who are involved in our criminal justice system, looking both at their risk and their criminogenic needs. From there, it ensures that we're able to pair programming and support services that address those needs, thereby interrupting the revolving door, helping to habilitate the folks that are in our care, reduce recidivism, and increase the safety and well-being of our community as a whole. So family visitation. Our current visitation area is roughly, and I'm gonna talk about the space of it and tell you that I'm definitely not in construction, and I measured based on the tiles on the floor. So my measurements are probably a little bit off, but the space is roughly 16 feet long by about 5 feet wide from the wall to the window. There's a long table, and it's split up into roughly sort of these 5 different booth areas that have partitions that separate them. This space is directly connected to the big metal door that closes really loudly when you go into the secure part of the jail. So if you can picture that, this space is not really conducive to having multiple people in it, nor is it conducive to having families or young children. So in April of 2017, the Urban Institute actually released a research report on visiting practices in jails and prisons. The article reported that at that time, it was estimated that 2.7 million children in the United States had a parent who was incarcerated, while more than 5 million, or 7% of all children in the United States have had a parent incarcerated at some point in their life. Having an incarcerated parent is traumatic, and the disruption of the parent-child relationship is one of the 10 identified adverse childhood experiences. Parental incarceration is often compounded by the other adversities that these children are likely to experience, including poverty, parental separation and divorce, and exposure to violence. I find it interesting, the rates of incarceration are actually so high in the United States that Sesame Street has a character and has an entire portal, if you will, online that offers toolkits to caregivers and parents on how they can help talk to kids about their parent being incarcerated. They also have a character who has a parent with addiction. So mitigating these risks is paramount to one of the ways we accomplish that is through parent-child visitations. Currently, our visitations are in-person, no-contact visits in that space that I talked about. I know video visits are coming later this summer. And so we really don't have the space to do anything more than that. But I will say research studies have found that parents who have more visits with their children while they're incarcerated have lower rates of recidivism post-release. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ted.
Thank you very much. I get to talk about this slide, or the very end of it, and then the next one. In this, you'll see update current space. We did look at that as an option for Wood County. That was one of the first things that we did, was to try to see if our current space could be modified and modernized, to at least make it safer for inside the facility. When we started looking into this, we had Venture Architect also go through this. By modifying our current 132-bed facility, it would reduce it to an 80-bed facility, which would then require us to house more people out than the current 90 that we do. So that was one of the things that we did look at for that, and that would just basically be reducing some of the bed space and cleaning up some of the mechanical problems that she talked about earlier, and that would also then be changing some of the situations within the facility to make them a little safer and make them more visible to our staff. In this slide, you'll see at the top upper corner, which is our booking desk area. The booking desk area is where everybody comes in. You'll see that individual standing on a black square that has 2 little foot marks in it. That's where everybody that comes into our jail stands. That's where everybody that leaves our facility also stands. The counter there is where we would book everybody in. We take all their items from them on the other desk, and then we would inventory everything that an individual has. As you can see the little space behind with the colors boards on there, that would be a reference of the blocks that are inside of our facility, so to show you where all the tags are or where individuals are currently housed within inside the facility. You go into that open door, and that's where we do the fingerprinting, and that's where we do the mug shots for the individuals. As you can see, that particular location is located behind where our staff actually work. So it's not a very safe situation for an individual who doesn't want to be there to then have to take them back where all our computers and all the other things that we would not want them to get at would be located. Sorry. The second slide over there, you'll see is part of our Sally Port. Our Sally Port was designed as it was added onto the building from the 1956, I believe, facility. When they added onto it in the late 80s, there was a discrepancy in the heights of the building. So they took care of that by adding a ramp so you can have the gurneys come up in for individuals you have to take out for emergency purposes, or also people that would come in with walkers, wheelchairs, and crutches. The stairs are there for our staff to come down to meet, so in a typical situation, an individual will pull up with a squad car, and we'd meet them out there in our Sally Port. COVID has made us also do our pre-booking out in the Sally Port, which means we're outside where the garage doors open in order to facilitate those first contacts with the individuals to bring them into our facility. Again, not a very safe situation, but it's one thing we had to do in order to cope with the space that we have. In the railing that you can see there in the blue door, that would be the first door or the second door, however you're coming in and out. If you're trying to turn a gurney into there, that door has to be held open by an individual, one of our staff, in order to let the gurney in. The second one has to then be opened in order to make the gurney fit in there because it doesn't fit between the doors in order to get that inside the facility. Same has to be said as they come out. But the ambulances cannot fit inside this area because over time they've made ambulances larger so that it's a little bit more of a working environment for the individuals inside. And by doing that, they no longer fit inside of our buildings. So in order to bring people in and out that way, we have to open up the garage doors, leave it open for the ambulance to park right up by that door. That of course is not your typical way you'd ever want to do that or best practice for a secure facility, but that is what we have to do currently today. Leave her to the next slide.
All right, so if you've seen this presentation before, this slide has changed a little bit. We tried to make this a more apples-to-apples comparison. So this is the cost comparison over the life of the jail. So we're calling the life 50 years. Hopefully the jail lasts longer than 50 years, but it's the number we picked. So if we stay as is, and continue to rent beds out of county. Over 50 years, we're going to be paying $80 million in out-of-county bed rental and transportation costs. With our needed repairs and updates and our safety and efficiency improvements, this is not including us reducing the bed capacity if we were to modernize the jail. This is if we were still able to keep 132 inmates there. We'd be paying $164,507,500 over 50 years. If we build a new jail, we'll have the immediate costs of the $46,850,000, non-construction of $9 million, the additional staff, that would be the 8 corrections officers and 1 maintenance staff, over 50 years would be $33 million. So our total cost over 50 years, which is a 20-year bond, would be $106 million. So there is a substantial difference in our stay as is versus our building a new jail. Also, we can bond for these construction costs. We can't bond for operational costs. So this is a number, this new jail is a number that we can control, but we can't control what's going to happen with our current maintenance problems with our jail or our bed rental. We don't control the rates that we're paying out of county. So in 2001, this had come up before, and the jail was $20 million. It failed at funding, so a new jail was not built in 2001. We're now looking at a $56 million jail in 2021. And this is a construction cost estimate of if we were not to build today, how much would it cost to build an identical jail in 10 years? And this is averaging a 4.5% escalation every year. So if we were to build the same size jail in 2031, we would anticipate paying $88,764,000. So as the committee, we wanted to make an overall recommendation to the county that we recommend bonding for $58 million to build a new jail to reduce recidivism, increase community safety, and reduce long-term cost while improving the health and well-being of the community as a whole. So now we would love to take any questions or comments. If you'd like, this microphone in front is on, so if you want to approach it, we have a whole group of people who can hopefully answer your questions if you'd like.
Well, Packard County's jail is what, about 20 years old? You've had some, I don't know, but I imagine you had some newer ones in the state in the last 20 years. What's their experience? Are they all positive? Or is there any negative experiences?
I guess in negative or positive, are we talking about for the inmate population themselves, or what do you mean by negative or positive, sir? What do you mean by negative or positive?
Well, it didn't go as smoothly as they hoped in terms of the economic factors.
Oh, okay. Well, in the economic factors, for Wood County currently, I've been the jail administrator now since late 2012. Our populations have been going up steadily. So economically, it's costing us more and more and more to run the operation that we currently have. During that same time, we've had other mechanical issues inside of our facility, which has caused us to shut down certain areas. We had to shut our kitchen down and have everything brought in at that one point in time in order to replace some of the piping in there. That same issue is now in our main hallway. What you saw was that long hallway running down the middle of our jail. So to repair that would be...
Are you aware of any of these that have built new ones in the last 20 years where they're not able to pay it off like they expected to?
I have not heard of any of people that, or agencies that have built that are not able to pay them off. If that's the question you're asking.
We were able to tour the Eau Claire County Jail recently, and we did ask the same question to them. All of their concerns have been very minor. It's been like, oh, I wish we would have put in more drains in the floor. It's been overall a net positive as far as they're concerned. I can't speak to any other county, but I'm not aware of any major concerns as far as the debt.
So much has been said about the bed rental. Have we been renting any of the Wood County beds to other counties?
No, we do not have the capacity to rent other beds to other counties. In the new jail plan, that's also not something that we plan to do.
It isn't.
No, it's just to house the inmates that we're currently responsible for.
Thanks, Laura. I just have a couple questions. I know the county is not able to or does not want to acquire any of the homes. We know that there's a house right on Avon and on the right side where the current parking lot is. I know we don't have the architectural engineer here, but it looks very, very close. How many feet approximately? I mean, I know they're looking on Avon Street, they can see towards the river. Now we have this huge structure kind of on both sides of their home. How is that? I mean, I know the structure would look nice, but you're talking a 3-story building. How many feet away from that home? Would it be better to try to acquire that home as far as, you know, how, if they can sell the house or, you know, quality of living in their home?
That's a good question. I think the sheriff spoke with that homeowner.
No,
Okay.
I didn't speak directly with that homeowner, but I spoke with a couple people in that area. That's a good question to see how close that, you know, the new facility would look. But going back to Eau Claire, when we viewed that jail, it was fairly close to several houses there, you know, probably within an estimate 20, 30 feet in that range. So I couldn't tell you exactly how close it would be, but in comparison to a new facility, it was within that range. So that's a good question that we could try to answer later. And with our architect, what are you estimating how close it would be? Will it be a view obstruction for that resident? Yes, bottom line, it will be. But you know, when we looked at this project, and as the footprint got smaller with the two-pod design, and we weren't acquiring any residential property, I think that talked a lot of us, including myself, in supporting this project, because I was not comfortable personally having to go and try to acquire property through eminent domain or any other means to put somebody out of a home. That's where, you know, it became really important to us, where the footprint became smaller, that we didn't have to go that route. So I couldn't give you the exact, you know, feet, how close it's going to be, but you know, I will say it would most likely be a view obstruction for that resident.
I suspect Portage County is short of space too. They've been talking about expanded space for 20 years. And both counties were talking about a joint prison out in the countryside. Was there any resurrection of those ideas, or?
About building in the country?
Yeah, with both counties together.
I don't think there was any talk about a joint county project.
Hubris.
He knows more than me about this.
There was several years ago discussed about a combined Huber facility, and that had to be probably close to 20 years ago, and it didn't work out. And I couldn't say exactly why. I mean, maybe logistics, location, I don't know. But I know Portage County does house inmates out of county, not to the level that we do. And there hasn't been any discussions on a joint facility or regional jail. I think that would be a hard, you know, thing to address and move forward with. Each criminal justice system in each county is different. So inmate populations are different between Portage, Wood, Marathon, and I just think that would be probably something that would be pretty hard to accomplish.
Sean, question for you. Just to let other people know, wasn't there years ago an idea of building a separate criminal justice center where we move the judges, move the sheriff's department off-site, but when they kind of look at preliminary investigation of trying to, okay, now you have human services and they're transporting, the cost just wasn't effective as it could be now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The further that you move the jail away from the courthouse, you know, you bring a lot of issues in, and you just brought that, you know, the transportation, bringing people, inmates back and forth with court. If you spend a day in our courthouse, you'll see that that's happening very often, that we're bringing inmates to and from court. Now, if you think about moving the facility to another location, you know, in the county, just think of those costs and safety concerns. It's not very safe right now bringing our inmates through, you know, the public areas of the courthouse. You know, an issue could happen with the new facility, and what we've looked at, everything would be secure as we move inmates to and from the courthouse. But you really need to have your jail connected to the courthouse because it's part of the criminal justice system. The further you move it away, you know, you bring a lot of issues that come up. And you bring up a really good point. If you want to build everything somewhere else, think of the cost. I mean, you're probably, if you're going to move all the courts, right now we have 3 of them, and all the other services under one facility, you're probably going to double the cost of what we're looking at right now.
And was there ever a possibility of looking at the parking lot? I mean, I know it's on the opposite side of where you are now, on the Baker Street parking lot per se. That's a huge lot. Obviously, you'd have to build some kind of a walkway, but it just doesn't line up correctly with the proportions. I know I have had a few people ask me about that as well. You know, why not use that parking lot? You're not by really any homes right there. You know, just a little bit easier. But.
Yeah, good question, but when we looked at the plans and where this two-pod design facility would fit, it's better going south from, you know, that area. That parking lot isn't used a lot, but you have to look at the current jail. That brings up a lot of opportunity in the future. If we move forward with this project, and whether we decide to demolish the current jail or shell it out, that gives the county some really future, you know, possibilities, because what are we going to do with the River Block building in 20 years and that lease is up? You know, do we need to, you know, bring, you know, those employees over to the courthouse and make, you know, everybody really closely under one roof? So, you know, that parking lot can be addressed as we move, you know, forward, but the facility itself really fit in the direction that we are going.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
$9.3 million is for non-construction costs. What are those costs?
The specific,
just an idea of what they are.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
It's easy to think of the brick and mortar stuff. What are the other costs there?
Yeah, no, and that's a lot of money, but you have to look at the project manager, you know, hiring a project manager, the architect, are probably the biggest costs that are going to be figured in there. Oh, and permitting with the city of Wisconsin Rapids to work on Avon Street it's all part of that as well. But I think the majority of those costs are going to be with your project manager and architect.
With the 30 cents on the $1,000, and then for the first year, and then 5 cents on the following year, then it's going to go down 5 cents a year. Is that the way I understood it?
Correct.
So in 7 years, there would be no additional cost on this if it keeps going down 5% a year.
I'll let Ed answer that.
Okay. It's always much better with pictures. Yeah, initially we're looking at about first year on the borrowing of 30 cents. Actually, the jail is going to actually be 27 cents per $1,000, and with our normal construction that we do every year, that would add an extra 3 cents. So yeah, looking at about 30. But anyway, sorry, the other way. So yeah, that would go up about 30 cents for the first year, then 35, then additional 5 cents on 2024. And then as we get longer, this is including our normal CIP of about 3.5 million per year. Then on the 7th year, we would start seeing a reduction. As you can see on the right-hand side on that pink side, we would start seeing a reduction on the taxes. So eventually we'll hopefully get down to a little bit lower each year after that, depending on, you know, how everything goes. But currently this is how it's projected to work.
So right now, you haven't had any bids on the project, correct? These are just estimates?
That's correct. And if I remember, when we talked to our project manager and architect, when they do go out for bids, they will show them, let them know this is the projected cost. So whenever somebody's going to bid on it, they will have to try and meet that cost.
I just put up a pole barn. I got lucky. I put it up before COVID hit. And I know costs have went up a lot. And I guess that would be a concern I'd have if, you know, with construction costs, you know, for materials and stuff like that.
Yeah, we talked to our designer and that. When you're looking at construction costs like that, that's more on your lumber and material. Of course, we're not going to be using any type of lumber or whatever. It's more in the concrete and stuff. So that cost hasn't risen as much as normal wood products have.
I know concrete has.
Yeah.
With the design here, you're going south, and I've been here a long time, the old Hal's Red Owl is the way I refer to that building. That will be taken down, is that correct?
Yes.
And, okay, and then will the Epson's, where Epson's was, is that going to be parking or is that going to be part of this project?
The Epson lot is currently not planned for. It could potentially be parking, but it is not part of the plans currently.
Okay, and then where the old Labor Temple was, because I know there was a bunch of barricades that I just noticed were removed recently. I didn't know, maybe that had something to do with this too.
No, not at all. Those are not county properties.
Okay.
So, no, currently just the parking lot to the south of the courthouse and Avon Street is the majorly affected areas.
Okay, thank you.
Just a suggestion, I didn't see it on the slip that you guys had outside, but if you wanted to let everyone know that this presentation is available on the Wood County website, if they wanted to look through the figures and stuff like that, I know I found it as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. We do have a presentation we made to the county board on the county's website. It was made last week, Tuesday. It's much longer. It goes into great detail, so if you want to go to sleep, I think you'll like it. Do we have any questions online? No? Okay. Oh, can we wait for the mic thing?
There's likely to be more traffic, more people. Any concern about redesigning the streets or traffic patterns?
Not really. One point that we made earlier was, yes, we have an inmate population now. It's over 200 when you include 90 people that we house out of county. And remember, when we bring them in, they're coming into the facility. We take them either to Waupaca or Adams County. When they get released, they're coming back to our facilities. So that inmate population that is going in and out of our current jail is over 200, depending on when they're coming in and being released. So with the new facility, it really isn't going to be, in our opinion, that much of an impact because we're already doing that. We're preparing this new facility for the current inmate population that we have.
Where will the parking be for this bigger building?
Sure. Well, if you want to look and see the yellow area, there'll be parking in that area. The parking lot where the flower shop was, that can be available as well. There is parking in front of the courthouse now that the city owns, and there's also parking just off of Baker Street that we talked about a couple minutes ago.
That slide shows you where the Red Owl building is. It shows you how far it is from those homes too. So visually you can tell.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Red Owl right here.
No,
it's not.
There was a question about how close it would be. That whole Red Owl building will be removed, so there'd be that much distance between the buildings.
I think she was asking about this white on the top.
And it'd be almost equal all the way.
Oh, it's equal as that?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the reason why we moved it as a 2 to go over. 3 would have taken it all, did it in regular backyard.
Okay.
That would have.
Any other questions? Back.
Wouldn't it be profitable to think about maybe renting out beds from folks from other counties?
Sure. I mean, well, and that's a great point because we've been doing it for over 20 years. And obviously, Waupaca has definitely seen the benefits to that. And we talked about that quite a bit. We felt that building this facility will be suiting the needs for our county for many, many years to come. And that, that came out of the jail study, and what's really interesting to bring up, when we went through this process in around 2000, same size facility was brought up then. And now we're here 20-some years later, and the same size facility has been brought up. Well, there's been a lot of changes to the design of what we're looking at compared to what it was 20 years ago. But the really important thing I want to make is the inmate population is essentially stayed the same. But what has changed? Cost, right? $23 million to build it in around 2000, now 58. And that's going to continue to go up. So, that could be something that could be discussed later in the future, you know, with this facility, but the priority is really focusing on what the needs for Wood County are.
Something to think about, though. It could be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you so much for
I just want to say thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us. And last thing I'll point out is thank you to our ad hoc committee. I know that everybody here has put a lot of time and effort in studying this information, and we really appreciate, as our organization, working with us to getting here today. And thank you, Lance, for being here and putting this committee together. I know this is a big project for all of us and the county, and we really appreciate where we're at right now.